how to handle small talk as an introvert. In this video, I'm going to show you, if you tend to be introverted and if you tend to be extroverted, how to leave a conversation, a small talk conversation, feeling refueled and not drained. And if you don't think it's possible, part of what I'm going to share with you is how to turn small talk conversations into conversations that matter with low effort, but a very high reward for you. Let's get into it. Okay, so to be able to give you a really juicy, in-depth video that will actually help and not just be a video that you watch, I'm gonna combine Susan Cain's work and her book, Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, and her TED Talk, which is like the Spark Notes version of the book, on the same topic. I'm gonna combine that idea with a book that Will, my co-founder, and I put together called Ask Powerful Questions, Create Conversations That Matter. So we're gonna take this idea of, oh my goodness, we live in a world where it overvalues and overfavors extroverts and small talk, and there's so much blah, 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 blah out in the world. How do we really take all of that, utilize powerful questions to create conversations that matter? So get ready for one major aha and realization that I had, and then two best practices that I've learned through practice over and over again. And the nice thing is, the minute this video is done, you'll be able to do both of them right away in the next conversation. In fact, I'm willing to say that at the end of this video, your brain will be poisoned with some really wonderful concepts and ideas that you won't be able to engage in small talk ever again, because you'll have two really low-hanging fruit, great ways to turn that into a conversation that matters for you and for them. All right, first little realization that I had was actually during a keynote where I asked a series of 3 questions to an audience. And the aha that came from those questions was kind of mind-blowing, just as much for me as it was for them. I asked them, how many of you like small talk? Less than 1% raised their hand. And then I asked them how many people really love conversations that matter, about topics that they're interested in, the kind of conversations that keep you up late at night, that you have with friends that you remember for years. Unsurprisingly, 99% of the hands went up in the room. And this was at an event where they had spent some time with colleagues for the last 2 days. And so the third question that I asked them was, in the last 48 hours, how many of you have been in at least 5 conversations that you would categorize as small talk? And almost every single hand went up. And this is crazy, because that means that at some point early in the conference, there were 2 people talking to each other. One person said, oh, this is kind of small talk. This is just like the idle chit chat. It's kind of the thing we do at work sometimes at events like this. They weren't feeling it. That other person was feeling the same thing, like, oh, small talk, I'm just kind of not feeling this. And then they parted ways and did it 4 more times with other people. And so the realization here is recognizing, as an introvert, small talk for me has nothing to do with the content of the conversation. It has everything to do with the process of the conversation. If people are really curious and they're interested and they're paying attention, you could be talking about the weather or a piece of dust on the ground, and it could be a conversation that really mattered because both of you were leaning in and interested, as opposed to leaning out, really excited to get out of the conversation. So as an introvert, your survival, one of your best survival assets in a conversation is your curiosity. You know, in Susan Cain's book, she talks about the power of some really phenomenal introverted leaders who changed the world. Gandhi, Buddha, Rosa Parks, Jesus, etc. People who had a profound ability to create amazing conversations that really matter. Can you imagine Buddha, Gandhi, Jesus, or Rosa Parks walking up to you and being like, what'd you do this weekend? I'm sure maybe they asked that at some point, but they had a way of really cutting to the heart of what matters. And as an introvert, you have an amazing tool to be able to do that, and it is your curiosity. Curiosity is this thing that kids have in spades, and as we get older or taller, we don't lose our curiosity, but we lose touch with our curiosity. And I think introverts are more curious people. Now, there is one small barrier in that there's a social risk associated with following your curiosity, noticing what's around you, what someone's saying, wondering about it, really tuning into what are you genuinely curious about, not what do you think you should ask because that's the thing that feels most appropriate or in the moment, or that's what other people do. No, what are you actually curious about? and then turn that into a question and ask it. There is about 6 seconds of social risk that happens in between you thinking that curiosity and asking that question. And on the other side of that 6 seconds of risk is potentially an entire conversation that is in small talk. On the other side of that question, there is a flow of really meaningful conversations that can come out. And my second realization here is that conversation is exponential. That one question that takes 6 seconds to ask opens a door, which is that person's answer. And when you notice, wonder, and inquire about what they share there, another door opens. Actually, 5 more doors open. And then you go into one of those and another door opens. Now, version 2.0 of this, if you're feeling bold and you're really sick and tired of small talk, the flip of this is actually asking people to ask questions. It's amazing how few questions adults typically ask in conversation. We're used to just saying sentence that ends in a period, sentence that ends in a period. In fact, when I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, part of my more extroverted way of settling into the community was doing lots of coffee dates. This was about 6 years ago. Doing lots of coffee dates with people. And in fact, at the end, I saved those people's information and whatnot. And I had a stack of cards and business cards and references to these people that was 200 to 300 people I had met one-on-one with 200 to 300 people in the first year that I lived in Asheville, which is like way too intense, not recommended. But what I realized about 50 conversations in is that we would get almost the whole way through the conversation and that other person may have only asked one question and maybe sometimes 0 questions. And so between conversations 50 and 300, I started actually getting about 10 minutes in and I just paused and I said, hey, I realized I'm asking a lot of questions. What are you curious about right now? And that question, what are you curious about right now? They could have asked that question about anything or shared. It was kind of a subtle, not so subtle cue to invite their curiosity into the conversation. And the coolest thing happened. You actually saw people's brains turn on. You saw this little move from autopilot, like I'm just having conversations like I normally do, plugging the cassette tape in and letting it play out. And you saw their brains just light up and be like, oh, right, I can be curious. This is a different muscle that I haven't used in a while. It was so cool to see that. And then holy smokes, conversations 51 through 300 in Asheville were way more interesting because I invited that mutual level of curiosity. Hey, I make these videos because I want to inspire you and leaders and educators to make connection and engagement as easy as possible. One way that Will and I have done that is by putting this book together, Ask Powerful Questions, Create Conversations That Matter. There is a free excerpt of it in the link below, and it's also available on Amazon for kind of a lot to me and Will's happy surprise. It's been sitting as a #1 bestseller on a handful of lists on Amazon for quite some time. So if you want to pick that up, other people have said it's really good, not just me, and so I trust that you'll really enjoy it and it'll help you navigate away from small talk and toward conversations that matter. Have an awesome day.